All right, Norman, you can call this meeting to order whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Norman Londris Jr. I'll be the moderator for this evening's annual financial town meeting. Good evening and welcome to the West Warwick fiscal year 2021 financial town meeting. It is Tuesday, July 14th, 2020 at approximately 6:07 p.m. and this meeting is convened. Again, at this time in West Warwick and throughout the world, the pandemic has taken the interaction from personal now to that of virtual. So this is a Zoom meeting. Please just have some patience. We will get through it, and slowly but surely we'll be together again. Could I kindly have the roll call by the town clerk for this evening's meeting?
Town Council, Councilman Licciardi. Councilman Licciardi?
Here.
I know he's here. Councilman Messier?
Here.
Councilwoman Williamson?
Here.
Council Vice President D'Amico?
Here.
Council President Goslin?
Here.
There is a quorum. School Committee? Joseph DiMartino?
Here.
Rini Kutu?
Here.
Susan St. Amand?
Here.
Luis Colon?
Here.
Steve Lawton? Steve Lawton?
Here.
Mr. Moderator, we have a quorum on both.
All right, there is a quorum as indicated by the roll taken by the town clerk. Before prayer and pledge allegiance during this time, this pandemic, on behalf of the town council and school committee, let us take a moment of silence for the 290 West Warwick residents that tested positive for COVID-19, the 26 that were hospitalized, and certainly the 21 fatalities to date. We can now have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. I now ask Town Council Vice President John D'Amico to lead us in a prayer.
We bow our heads, please. Heavenly Father, we pray for your divine presence during this evening. Bless us all with your Holy Spirit. We thank you, Father, for your guidance and for giving us all the strength that we have needed to persevere during this very difficult and very trying time. And finally, Father, we ask that you watch over our great town and all of her many good citizens. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. I recognize Vice Chairman Louis Colon of the school committee. Louis, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you.
Item 3 on the agenda is the reading of the warrant.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading of the warrant.
There's
Second.
a motion made by Vice President John D'Amico to waive. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Mary Beth Williamson. All those in favor of waiving the reading of the warrant signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. Any nays? No, so the ayes do have it. The motion passes. At this time, considering it is a Zoom financial town meeting, I will introduce individuals that are usually on stage that take place in the Town of West Warwick meeting. So from the municipal side, the Town Council President, David Goslin Jr., Town Council Vice President, John D'Amico, members of the Town Council, Councilwoman Mary Beth Williamson, Councilman Jason Messier, and Councilman Jason Licciardi. Certainly our Town Manager, Ernest Zimslinski, our Town Solicitor, Timothy Williamson, the Town Clerk, Mary Ann Kelly, and the Finance Director, Kristen Benoit. From the School Department, our School Committee Chair, Stephen Lawton, School Committee Vice Chair Luis Colon. Remaining members of the school committee, Rainey Kutu, Joseph D. Martino, and Susan St. Amon. Superintendent of the schools, Karen Tarasevich. School Department Director, Financial Operations, Joseph Spagner. And I believe the school committee attorney, Aubrey Lombardo. Of course, everyone here this evening understands that certainly the town department heads are here as well. So certainly everyone from their individual departments will be present, as well as attendees as well. So again, I welcome you this evening, and this is the financial town meeting, whereby the town manager, the town council, and the school committees will give you an overview of the fiscal year 2021 budget. This budget will be voted on this Thursday, July 16th, by all duly registered town voters. Voting is at the Civic Center, I believe, from 7 a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. the polls close. Shortly, you will be given an overview of the budget presentations. It'll be from the town manager, the school committee chair, along with Superintendent Tarasevich, and finally with the town council president. Following the presentations, certainly each and every one of the attendees will have the opportunity to raise their virtual hand, be noticed, and speak on this fiscal year 2021 budget. This evening is specifically for just that, the 2021 budget. So I ask that other concerns not related to this budget are saved for future town council and/or school committee meetings. There are just a few rules as a moderator that I set out, as I did last year. All are welcome to speak during this evening. However, I would like to address questions in an orderly fashion, seeing it's a Zoom meeting. So I will limit one question at a time. If an individual has more than one question, certainly you're going to have the ability to ask that question. But I would like to take questions from other individuals first, and we'll certainly get back to you on your multiple questions as the night progresses. When I do acknowledge anyone to speak, kindly state your name and your address before addressing your specific budget question or concern to this panel. At that time, I'll direct it to certainly who may be answering that particular question, whether it start with the town manager, the town council, the certain school committee personnel, and/or Superintendent Tarasevich. I will direct it to where it should be going. Most importantly, just let's keep this, our comments, suggestions, remarks, civil, and conduct ourselves in a respectful manner, as I know we all will do. So at this time, I'm going to move to the budget presentations. I'd like Town Manager Ernest Zimslinski, please, to address all those in attendance in respects to fiscal year 2021 budget. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Judge Landroche, and good evening, and welcome to the Financial Town Meeting for the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget. And thank you for your participation on our Zoom platform. The last time I addressed the FY21 budget, the common theme was uncertainty. And through the months that have transpired, we have had our reopening phase 1, 2, 3, bringing back some of the regular routine, although change that we've experienced since the first days of the coronavirus and our adjustment to that. Today, we still have uncertainty as one of the chief concerns. Nationwide, there is a resurgence of the coronavirus positive cases. Here in Rhode Island, we are experiencing a slight increase, but through the measures of the governor, we are still on a good course compared to the rest of the country. But again, certainly that is an unknown, how long the virus will be here and where we will go in the future with it. The Rhode Island General Assembly hasn't addressed the FY21 budget as of yet. They are going to wait until it is known whether or not States, and particularly the state of Rhode Island, will be receiving any federal aid to assist with the financial problems that the state has. And again, this will have a direct impact on cities and towns because state aid is one of the, to cities and towns is one of the largest items in the state budget. So we all are waiting for the General Assembly to meet. They are waiting for the federal government, the Congress. So while this is going on, cities and towns still have to continue to operate and adopt a budget. We have governmental services to perform, and we believe we have a sound budget to present to the voters. One of the significant changes from the earlier presentation of the manager's proposed budget, this budget has been reduced by $3 million combined for the town and school. And the budgetary increase from FY20 to 21 is about $1,100,000. So overall, a very slight increase. The new proposed budget is $101,800,000. Of that, about $59 million is attributable to the school department, and a little over $42 million is allocated for the municipal government. And many, many years ago, I was taught that the adoption of the annual budget is the most important decision elected officials can make. And here in West Warwick, ultimately, it's what the citizens will approve. The annual budget sets the community's priorities through the allocation of funds to support those services that the citizens deemed important for their quality of life. If you look at the proposed budget, 58% is allocated for the school department. The general government portion of our budget, 11.6%, is areas that are not included in any specific budget, such as retiree health care, retiree pension costs, liability insurance, workers' comp insurance, computer services. So a variety of items that are not specific to one department are in this larger department. Next is our fire department, which is 9.6%, police protection, 7.9%, public works, 4.4%, debt service, 3.4%, which actually is a very good number. Many communities have a significant amount in debt service. So that's actually a very low number. And then general government financial administration is 3.3%. Again, a common question, where does the money come from to support municipal government? Local property tax, the largest item. Property taxes, local revenues, about 3%. Again, what does this mean for the residents and taxpayers? When the final budget's adopted, the tax assessor will set the tax rates. Currently, the estimate of a tax rate increase for all the classes is 1.92%. So this equates to about 43 cents per $1,000 of valuation. So sort of a little, just a slight primer on the budget. In closing, the municipal budget provides necessary funding for our police, fire, and public works departments. It restructures our Parks and Recreation Department to allocate additional employees to maintain our facilities and parks. It fully funds the required pension contribution for the town, fully funds the required healthcare contribution for the town, and it continues the fiscal and budgetary practices which have improved the town's fiscal performance and overall financial position. So again, in closing, I'd like to thank those of you who are here this evening, participating in the process of our financial town meeting, and I look forward to answering your questions later in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Manager. If I could now call on School Committee Chairman Stephen Lawton for a few words in respects to the school committee budget.
Thank you, Norm. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name's Steve Lawton, and I'm the chairperson for the West Warwick School Committee. On behalf of the West Warwick School Committee, I am pleased to report that on February 14th, we voted to approve a balanced budget for FY21, which was presented to the Town Council several times this past spring. However, due to an anticipated reduction in state aid, the budget originally approved by the school committee needed to be amended based on an anticipated reduction of 1.9 million in state aid. The changes to our original budget included reductions in the overall budget, such as overtime, professional development, supplies, etc. However, the most difficult decision in developing the amended budget was having to issue layoff notices to several employees in the district in order to balance the budget with the expected reduction in state aid. In preparing the FY21 budget, we had 5 goals. 1, present a balanced budget. 2, support education and programming in our school department. 3, compliance with educational mandates as well as the BEP. 4, continued compliance with pension and OPEB contribution requirements. And 5, consideration of future budgets. Over the past several years, the school committee has been fortunate to have a positive working relationship with the town council, in which we have been able to work together for the overall good of the town. The school department's commitment to the fiscal stability of the town over several years has been an important part of our budget development and collaborative efforts. If I can, I would like to now ask the superintendent to add a few remarks more specific to the budget. Karen?
Thank you,
As
Steve.
the- Certainly, I recognize the Superintendent Tarasevich, and based on Chairman Lawton's request, the floor is now yours, Superintendent. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for once again having us here at the Financial Town Meeting to address the school department's budget. And I'd just like to elaborate a little bit on what Chairman Lawton just presented. So due to the fiscal status of the state and the deficit situation of the state budget, we've been forced to make some very difficult decisions relative to the school department budget this year. As we all know, by state statute, we are required to present a balanced budget. We were advised to plan on level funding from the state for FY21, which means we would have needed to cut $1.9 million from our originally presented FY21 budget. Our original budget presented this spring was $62,197,985. And with significant cuts, we were able to reduce that amount, $1.9 million, to an amended budget of $60,245,677. This has made a devastating impact on our budget and has led us to make very difficult decisions, as the chairman has already talked about. The school committee was faced with the extremely difficult decision to accept my recommendations to balance the budget. In order to do so, we made those cuts equaling 1.9 million, which included several layoffs and the cut of several vacant positions. So overall, we had a combination with the Teachers Alliance. There were 6 layoffs and 4 reductions of positions. And in Council 94, the layoff of 14 part-time positions and the reduction of 4 vacant positions. And we have not filled 1 administrative position at the high school. So just in those positions, it was a reduction of $1,050,920. And the additional deficit was made up within the overall budget from pension, of operations, capital, professional development, overtime, and more. These were extremely difficult decisions to make as its impacts the lives and livelihood of employees involved and impacted the school department in what we can do and not do to operate the school without these positions in place. We cannot follow state, federal mandates or follow the BEP and support our students' special education needs per their IEPs without these additional staff. The school department has asked the town council to request the allocation of $800,000 for this upcoming year. This request was factored into our budget prior to our need to reduce our budget by $1.9 million. It is more important than ever that the school department is supported by this allocation, as the funding from the state and federal government, as the town manager has already spoken about, is still very uncertain for the upcoming year. As you are already aware, it has been several years since the school department has requested an allocation of funding from the town. It's been in the past 6 years, we've been level funded all but 1 year, in which there was an allocation of approximately $900,000, of which we have made an agreement with the town to use approximately $300,000 of that to pay Webster Knight Drive. Other than that, there was zero allocation from the town from those years, but we were level funded. Between state aid, grants, and adjustments to our budget and practice, the school department has been proactive in supporting the town's troubling fiscal stability. We have come to the point in time where the school department must seek support from the town of West Warwick to support our students, programming, and to continue the success our students have achieved over the past several years. Just a couple of highlights. Our graduation rate is now 92%. That's unprecedented high amount. We have several new pathway programs. Our graduates are getting accepted into higher education facilities at unprecedented rates as well. So we really need to continue to support our students in every way, including those few. And as the chairman has also said previously to me, we have worked hard to develop and foster a strong relationship with the town. It's been our good fortune to be able to do that in the past several years, and we're proud of the contributions we've been able to make to the town and supporting in several ways. And as I just said, it's come to a point in time where now we need to request an allocation from the town to support the school department. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Tarasevich. Our final presenter will be our Town Council President, David Gosselin Jr. Town Council President.
Good evening. On behalf of the Town Council, again, I want to thank everybody who attended via Zoom. This is an unprecedented year of doing this via social media and video chat. So definitely a learning curve for us and part of history here in West Warwick. I'm going to try not to repeat what Superintendent Kevin Tarasevich said and the Town Manager Ernie Zimmerlinski, but I do want to point out some points here. The council was given an original budget that included a 3.9% increase in the original first meeting. The Town Council currently worked that budget down to a 1.5% levy increase and 1.9% tax increase, which equates to about 43 cents per 100,000, I'm sorry, 48 cents per 100,000 in valuation. The town's additional appropriation is $300,000 and the school department is $800,000. And it's the first time in 5 years the school department has asked the town for additional revenue. And they have worked diligently every year with the Town Council to do so. We've even gone back to them and when they brought their budgets to us and asked if they can reduce it further, and they have done so over the past 5 years. The town manager, the school department, town council, and some department heads have been faced with some challenges this year. We have heard from many residents in the community, and I think in this budget, the town council listened. The town is obligated to make its pension contribution for our hardworking men and women who serve you as taxpayers. The pension contribution this year is $10,495,443. This increase alone from last year is more than what our budget contribution, what our budget increase is this year. We're also adding a behavioral health navigator to assist our police department with these types of issues that arise. We have had this position in the past through grants, and it was a big success. This was brought to us by Councilman Messier, and the council agreed to budget for this position. The council has seen issues we've had in Parks and Rec and seen how understaffed they have been, and we have restructured Parks and Rec through negotiations this year. Yard waste has been privatized and is a set schedule. This will keep our sidewalks clear from debris for weeks on end. You can view that schedule on the DPW website. And we did this through after 5 years of privatizing garbage and coming out with a new garbage program with the totes. This year was the first year the totes were not going to be on the contract. So the town council decided to take that portion of the DPW through negotiations and privatize it. And now it's set for a weekly pickup at your home on the same day your garbage is. So that's something else the council has improved. Some of you have asked where the snowplow and savings have gone this year. We are anticipating a surplus, but we also are using that surplus towards this 2021 budget to ease the burden on the taxpayers. And last but not least, the town has job openings coming up for unfilled DPW workers and department. If you're looking for a job with the town and you're looking to be a proud employee of West Warwick, please visit our website for these job postings. We are looking for ambitious men and women who want to strive and make our town look great. And you know, this is an opportunity for many people to help with the local economy, and hopefully we get some applicants. And that'll help the DPW, who's been very understaffed this year due to either retirements, on-the-job injuries, or moving into other departments. It seems year after year we are faced with new challenges, and this is what builds character. I think I've seen it all, and something new always seems to pop up. I have been through Governor Kacheri's cuts to cities and towns, floods of 2010, pension reform, and now COVID-19. This will be a challenging year for the school department and the town, but I have faith in all the leaders, department heads, employees of this town to make it work as they do every single year. Thursday is your opportunity to cast your vote. This town council and school committee, department heads, town manager, superintendent have worked very hard to get this budget where it is today. We've had many meetings. We've had 4 or 5 public hearings, and we continue to do what's best for the town. So this Thursday, I urge you to come out and vote. Make sure you vote. I will be supporting this budget, and I hope you do too. Thank you, and God bless, and have a good night.
Thank you, President Gosselin. At this time, the moderator will begin the public comment portion following the budget presentation. So I am going to try to attempt to see virtual hands and work my way through this. Are there any questions out there? I see, let me get this right. Is it Helene Tay raised her hand?
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. If you
Okay.
could
So I'm
kindly-
Helene Tay. I live at 650 East Greenwich Avenue.
Okay.
And so some of the questions one of the questions I have is about department head salaries. Many of the department heads got a 9% salary raise, and I think that's a bit high. I'm wondering if somebody can explain why we're being so generous with the raises this year.
Okay, I will direct this to the town manager to address the question by Ms. Tay.
Yeah, yes. The raises or increases for the department heads non-union are over a 2-year period. So it's a 2-year period, but as you know, the 5-year plan called for 0 salary increases for at least 3 of the 5 years with wage reopeners. And I believe the non-union employees received, I want to say 4 years of 0 increases. And the 5th year, a wage reopener, similar to what the Council 94 employees received. And then the last 2 years was the approximate 9%. So one of the items or one of the considerations going into really the negotiations with all of our unions, as well as with our non-union employees, we had to recognize what had happened the last 5 years, some of the sacrifices that were made. So when we went into union negotiations, we had one of our goals was to develop contracts that were fair to employees and fair to the residents and taxpayers. And I believe we accomplished that goal. And with the non-union employees, I think maybe have 15 of them, what was given to them, awarded by the council upon my recommendation, was the cumulative of the 2 years, 9%. And that was, I think, probably, again, on the low end of what the increases were. But again, it was something that was considered fair, given the fiscal plan that was developed 5 years and what was going on again, with the salary increases. Because again, whether for all of our employees, while we had the 5 years basically frozen, other communities were increasing their salaries. So again, we wanted to be fair to all of our employees, wanted to be fair to our non-union employees, and give them award them a salary increase we felt was fair given the conditions and situations that we were in and found ourselves in.
Mr. Town Manager, I guess I'm a little confused because none of the department heads are members of the union. And it's not true that those department heads did not get a raise in previous years when their employees didn't get a raise. Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to say, let me clarify. The department heads were getting raises, even though their employees were not getting raises.
I haven't been here the full 5 years. That's not what my understanding was.
Well, you can look at your own budget. It's right in front of you.
Well, you can look at the budget. The budget tells you some things.
Yes.
You have new employees.
2019.
You can have, we've had maybe 9 new directors since my tenure here. So if you go back and look, what you may see is a salary for someone that is for an employee that's different than the predecessor. So it's more than looking at numbers. You have to look at really what's behind numbers. What do they mean? Again, I can tell you that we've had a new tax assessor, new finance director, had a new police chief, fire chief, building official, minimum housing officer, probably forgetting one, and two directors of public works. Again, when you recruit positions, you have to pay what is a acceptable rate that employees will want to come work here. I think that in many cases, our salaries were on the low end. Sometimes they were okay, and very rarely were they, you want to say, on the high end. So again, I think if you have to look at, other than just the numbers, what's behind them. And I would say that there has been a lot of new employees hired in non-union directors in the last 2.5+ years. So many of those probably had, I'm sure they had higher salaries than their predecessors, because that was the going rate to attract good qualified employees to come work for the town of West Warwick.
Okay, well, I can't vote for this budget because a 9.9% a 9% salary increase is really only given in the private sector to people who have contributed greatly to the financial line of their company. So this is, I think, is just too high for a public sector raise. So.
Right. Thank you, Tay. Thank you, Ms. Tay. I did see you indicate you might have another question, but I'm going to try to see if there's any virtual hands out there besides yourself and get back to you, okay?
Okay.
Are there any other questions? I have Derek R. raised his hand. Is that Derek Reed?
Yes.
Right, Mr. Reed, the floor is yours. If you could just state your name and give your address, please.
It's Derek Reed, 62 Andrews Ave, West Warwick. I have multiple questions. I guess we're going to start with the first one. I don't know who it's directed for, and I'm sure somebody will hopefully have the answer. I want to know how much money has the town spent on cases that are not included in the solicitor's stipend?
All right, I guess I'll start with the town manager, see if he can address that question from the municipal standpoint.
That would be for anything above and beyond the stipend, which is litigation. I don't have that figure with me. I don't know if the finance director has maybe an idea of what that may be, but I don't have that figure with me.
So, Mr. Manager, if we don't have that number, I'm going to say this again. We're going into a new budget with no contracted solicitors for the town of West Warwick. So we have no budgetary numbers other than last year. And now you're telling me you don't know how much money has been spent on cases.
I can tell you.
Not included in the stipend.
Mr. Reed, I can get acknowledged by the finance director, Ms. Benoit. You can address it, Ms. Benoit. Thank you.
Thank you.
As of for July through April 30th, $51,369.
Okay. Say that again.
$51,369.
Okay, thanks. I got another question for the council president.
Well, I'm going to see if there's any hands out there, and I'll get back to you. All right, Mr. Reed? I'm just trying to give everyone in order anyway, and I'll get back to both you and Ms. Tay if there's other questions.
Okay.
Are there any other virtual hands out there? Tom raised his hand. The moderator recognizes Tom. Tom, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Norman. Nice to see all of you. I apologize. I just got on. I've been tied up with a case. Just to go back to Mr. Reed, please forgive me with names because my mind is spinning. $51,369. That figure to our finance director, what was the dates that it was inclusive of?
Can you answer that, finance director?
Yep. It was July through April 30th.
So July 19th through
April, this past April
20. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thank you.
Is there another question, another virtual hand out there that I can address?
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear.
I don't see any other virtual hands. Are there questions from the individuals who already spoke? I'm going to recognize Mr. Reed back at the, you're all set, Derek. It's your second turn.
Thanks. This is a question for Council President. How much money did the town pay the solicitor for the Kelsey case? And I don't want to get any fictitious numbers because I've got the invoices in my hand right now.
Mr.
That's probably a question for the finance director. I don't have those receipts.
All right, so if the finance director, is that something you can address with Mr. Reed?
Not at this time. I have to dissect every single invoice. It's all itemized separately.
Again,
Definitely
we got
not something
we got a line item on here for legal services to the town, and we don't have numbers put together. So how do we know what that line item is?
The administrative expense is the cost of the solicitor.
Yep. So what is the cost of the solicitor?
He gets $7,500 a month for his
I understand.
solicitor
Oh.
fees, and then he
What-
gets additional fees for his litigation bills that are submitted monthly, for which I go through them line by line before
Should
they
we
are
have that
approved.
number ready for the budget? I mean,
It's an
I'll go on
estimate.
to the next question. I'll go on to the next question. How many open lawsuits does the town have right now?
I'll defer to Tim on that.
Solicitor Williamson, can you answer that question?
In excess of 35.
How many?
In excess of 35.
So we'll say 35 plus. Thank you.
I did.
The next one is,
So I'm gonna go to Mr. Oates. I did see his hand raised, and I'll get back to you. All right, Mr. Reed?
Thank you.
Tom, was that your hand again? I do recognize you, Tom. You can go ahead.
I'm sorry, Norman. It looks like I was muted. I muted myself. I apologize.
Floor is yours for question 2. Go right ahead.
Okay, the question has been asked already by Mr. Reed, so I'm good with that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tom. Next question. Recognize you. Hold on, there's 2 participants. How do I find out which one?
Derek Reed had his hand up first.
Could I ask who the second one was, though? I can't see it.
It's Helene Tay again.
Helene Tay and Derek Reed are both back up, Norman.
All right, why don't we take Miss Tay next? Mr. Reed asked 2 questions already. Let's take Miss Tay next.
Ms. Tay has the floor. Ms. Tay, you have yourself muted.
Done, unmute. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can, Miss Tay. If you could just...
Yay. Okay, so we had, the town manager had recommended, I'm sorry, the town department had recommended $250,000 be added to the OPEB contribution. And it was declined. So I'm wondering why, because we're way behind on our OPEB contributions.
Can I start with you, town manager?
Yes, in looking at the budget, looking for ways to reduce the budget to fit with the goal that was requested, we felt that that expenditure could be taken out of the budget. Again, there is no requirement to fund OPEB, other post-retirement benefits. So there's no requirement to fund it. And given this year, we felt that it was an expense that did not need to be made. Now, I will tell you that hopefully when all the bills are in, we budgeted so much for retiree health care. If our experience is less than what the budget amount is, those excess funds will go into the OPEB trust fund. So to answer your question, it was reduced because it felt that that expense could be deferred. And there is no requirement for any specific funding. And we were hopeful that when all the bills come in and we look at the accounts, that there will be excess that will go into the OPEB trust fund.
So I don't understand what the long-term consequences are of not funding OPEB to its fullest.
Well, I would say that I'm not aware of any community that funds OPEB to the fullest. I would tell you that most communities, I'm not sure what the number of that have OPEB trust funds. There are a substantial amount that do not have OPEB trust funds. You know, we have one of the communities that do, and the town has made contributions, and every year that we can, contributions are made. Now, clearly, healthcare costs are rising for active employees and retired employees. So in dealing with our budget preparation, we have to make allowances for healthcare for active and retired employees. So it is a budget item and expense that needs to be budgeted for as like any other expense that we have. Ideally, if the community had sufficient funding, you would put in as much as you could afford. This is a year where we felt the small amount that we had was used elsewhere in our budget as we had to make reductions.
So I think that answers the question regarding the $250,000, Ms. Tay. So I'm going to move on to Mr. Reed. Hold on, there's two participants that raised their hand. Is there someone other than Mr. Reed out there, Joe?
Brian Moyo, I believe the last name is.
Brian, if that's how you say your name, if you want to.
Hi, this is Brian Moyo, 132 Rollingwood Drive. I have brought to the attention of the council in the past about deficiencies in ADA requirements, and I'm just curious if in this current budget there is adequate funds for retaining a landscape architect as suggested by the town planner and town manager's office. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Town Manager, go ahead.
Yes.
Mr. Moyo, did you get that?
Yes, I did, and I appreciate the manager's response.
Thank you. Looking out, I see Derek Reed as the only hand at this point. So Mr. Reed, oh, hang on. Is there another one besides Mr. Reed?
Norman, there's Tom Oates again. Tom Oates again.
All right, let's give Derek Reed the opportunity next, and I'll get to Thomas in a minute. Derek, the floor's yours.
There we go. You hear me now?
I can.
Okay. This is for Councilwoman Williamson. How much money is owed to the town from the Civic Center? Owed to the town from the Civic Center?
Councilwoman Williamson, can you answer that?
I will ask Kristen Benoit, but I believe it's, I think there is a accumulated deficit of somewhere around 800,000. Is that correct, Kristen?
I'm checking the audit right now for last year. Civic Center, revenues, liabilities. $855,000.
And Kristen, this is Dave Goslin. Can you just clarify where that 800,000, 855,000 came from. If I want to just verify, and for the public's knowledge, that's a lot of that came when the town took it back over for repairs, Zamboni, in many different things that added up to that dollar amount. It's not due to.
Yeah, that's correct. It's when the town took the building back over and had numerous building improvements that needed to be made in order to continue business in that building.
But regardless, it's an $855,000 debt, right?
It is owed back to the town, but there are also assets that are in the Civic Center that belong to the town to the tune of about $1.4 million. So it still has a positive net position.
Yeah, the net position would be positive, Derek. The operating deficit is the 855 over a number of years. And as President Goslin just said, much of that did arise from us taking it back over after it was privatized.
So either way, is the $855,000, does that have to get paid back to the town?
If we were to close up shop, yeah.
Or
go ahead.
It's the town's investment in the building, which the town owns. So it would, if they closed up shop and sold the property, they would recoup their input into the building.
Okay, so we just sit on that as a loss for now?
It's just a liability, basically,
Okay,
right now.
all right. So with that being said, if there's no deadline and there's no set date of when this money has to come back, my question would be, shouldn't every homeowner and business in West Warwick get the same luxury?
Well, I'm not going to say, I'm going to rule this not germane to the Civic Center issue at this point, Derek. If you want to ask that question at a later time, I'll let you do that. I think the answer of the debt has been asked at the $855,000, and I do believe the finance director has.
But I also believe I'm a taxpayer in the town and I can ask questions.
Sure, and you can ask it right after I take the next Q&A. You can certainly get back up.
All right, I'll get back. I'll wait.
Absolutely. Thank you. So it looks like I have an anonymous attendee. And the question is, what is the breakdown between commercial versus residential property tax as town revenue source? Could I direct that towards either the town manager or the finance director?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I can tell you what the different tax rates are. You know, in the property values that are assigned.
Hey, Kristen, I just want to, this is probably a question for Sal. I think they're looking for the percentage, and correct me if I'm wrong, whoever that anonymous person is. They're probably looking for the percentage of the budget, how much comes from commercial, how much comes from residential.
Right, so why don't we play,
Okay.
why don't we take it that way? Sal Saccoccio, can you answer that, tax assessor? And the attendee did say that's the question they would be asking, he or she. Sal, can you address that?
Sal here. Well, we have different tax rates for the different types of properties in the town. The apartments, I believe, have the highest tax rate, followed by the commercial property. Then we have multifamilies, 5 down to 2 owner unoccupied. And then the lowest rate in the town is actually for the residential properties, which is proposed for $23 this year. Now we have that broken down. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think maybe Kristen has for each one of those categories and what the budget amount is for those. to give us the $65 million total that we get from taxes.
So if you want to know what portion of revenue generated from taxes goes towards the budget, 55% of the 65 million is generated from residential single primary. 9% is generated from residential code 3 apartments, which I believe is 2 owner occupied or 2 owner non-occupied. 17% comes from residential code 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll defer to Sal on what that means. I think that's apartments.
No, that's commercial.
The
4
code-
is mixed use, 5 is commercial, 7 is
Okay,
industrial.
so 17% of the 65 million comes from that. 9% comes from residential code 40, 50, 30, multi, that's multi apartments. Correct, Sal?
Yes. Yes, it
Okay.
is.
And motor vehicle 5%, and tangible businesses is 8%.
All right, thank you, Finance Director. Thanks, Sal. I think that answers the question from the anonymous attendee. If I have another, I believe I might have another question and answer. Just give me 1 second.
Mr. Moderator, may I suggest that anonymous identify themselves?
It's a good point, Mr. Solicitor.
Mr. Moderator, you actually have a few questions in the attendees. One from Jen Moore. Her microphone's not working, from 8 Robinson Way.
Do you have that question?
Actually, it's a point of, looks like she doesn't have a question there. And then you actually have, she's just asking a question because her microphone's not working. You also have a Jim. He wants to know if we can ask for point of order. Are we obligated to state our name and address? Yes, that should be done.
Yeah, that certainly was on the moderator, that last one.
And Jen, looks like a question she asked with regard to health insurance premiums. Does the town absorb the increase in health premiums every year? If so, is it in the contracts? I can answer that real quick. Our contracts are the employees pay a percentage of their health care. So when it goes up on the employee also. So the town actually negotiated that way back in 2008, 2010, in one of the last contract negotiations. I remember Councilman Kelsey was on the, that's how long ago it was. So we went from where the employee once had a flat rate, now they have a percentage. So when the increase goes up, their healthcare goes up too.
Thank you, Town Council President. I do see a hand up, I believe, from Pamela Poulin-Brown. Pam?
No, this is Howie talking. How you doing, Norman?
Your address.
Oh, I'm at 9 Miller Drive.
Howard Brown, 9 Miller Drive. The floor is yours.
I got one question. It's about the solar farm. Do we have any assets or expenses in this budget that pertains to the solar farm? And if we get any revenue from the solar farm, can't we help the Civic Center with that money? Or are we not getting any money? I haven't heard a thing about any of that solar farm in 5 years, more or less. I don't know if we're getting any money from it. I don't know if we're creating expenses from it. Is there anything in the budget pertaining to that solar farm? That's my question.
Town Manager, can you address that?
Is that, you referring to the wind turbines? Or-
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yes. The wind turbines, the ones that are in Covington.
Oh, that's part of the electricity that is generated from that and fees. But I'll let the Finance Director explain, how that funding works. Kristen?
So in our budget, in our debt service is 410,000, I believe, set aside to be transferred into an internal service fund that pays the debt service for the wind turbines. That 410,000 represents what the town's electricity cost basically would be. other departments of the town pay into this internal service fund. We are also making money in the internal service fund by selling Rex, and we are building up a balance to help pay the debt service in that internal service fund.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Why don't I recall Tom Oates at this time? I do see Tom's hands back up.
Thank you, Norman. David, President Goslin, thank you for addressing Miss Moore. She had messaged me and I was getting ready to jump on that to relay her message. My question is, and my screen is going crazy here. I don't know who's who. I believe there are 12 panelists and our moderator, Mr. Landrosh. How many, do we have a count of how many taxpayers are out there in the audience for this meeting? Or will we have that, tallied up at the end?
So Norman, Mr. Moderator, we have 28 panelists.
I see 100 right now total.
Yeah,
Oh,
we have-
great.
70.
Maybe this is better because the last 2 years we've had 36 between firemen, policemen, and everybody else in the audience. So if you see 100 people out there, that's great that there are other people out paying attention to this. Thank you.
You're welcome, Tom. I do. I'll call Derek Reed back up. Back up.
Norman,
Derek,
you also have a typed in question.
I got a typed in one. Let me just. So this question, let me put this question out before I get to Mr. Reed again. So this is Molly Hayes, M-A-L-I, 13 Kathleen Court in our town. How are the residential properties assessed for tax value? Can I address that to the tax assessor, Sal Saccoccio?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is Sal. Properties are assessed every 3 years by state law. We hire a professional revaluation company to assist us. They go through the 3 methods of value: sales, reproduction, and income. In between those 3 years, if anything's done to the property, if anything's changed, we would change the assessment accordingly. And everyone has a chance to appeal their assessments every year, not just the year of the revaluation.
Thank you, tax assessor. I believe that answers the concern from the Hayes family on Kathleen Court. Let me just go back and see if there's any more hands. And I will take Derek Reed again at this time. Derek?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. So the sewer department pays the town for town administrative services, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So why doesn't the Civic Center do the same?
The Civic Center is a different type of entity than the sewer treatment plant. And it has not been decided when and how they will contribute. They really need to get on their feet first before that kind of decision is made. Not to mention the work that we do for the Civic Center is nominal in comparison to what we do for the sewer.
Okay, but we do it, right?
It doesn't even compare. It's apples to oranges.
All right.
And Mr. Reed, I'd like to acknowledge that real quick. We also do services for the other communities that are participating in our sewer system, not just West Warwick. So that's where that revenue comes from also.
I understand that, Council President, but the question is, the sewer department is a separate entity from the town itself. The Civic Center is a separate entity from both. If one entity that has to do with the town, which is the sewer department, has to do it, I would think the other one has to do it. It doesn't matter how much time is spent. Time is money. And as taxpayers, we're paying administrative people to do administrative services for the Civic Center and the sewer department. So at the end of the day, it's still a cost to the taxpayer, right or wrong.
I won't argue that, but I will say this is the first year, starting July 1 of 20, that we are non-unionized up there. And we are looking at our first year as a town before it was privatized as non-union. And I've been a proponent, let's face it, lots of our families, lots of our friends, lots of children in this town use that Civic Center and ice rink. The school department uses it. We help supply indoor gym classes when needed. We supply indoor practices for the high school teams when needed. There's many different uses for that town. And there's a lot of things that aren't charged back to the town that we could look at, but in the end, it still washes out. So if we're, let's just say we ask the school department, hey, you're using this 10 hours a week, we need you to pay $25,000 a week or $2,000 a week. The school department says, great. The school department comes to us and says, I need $100,000 at the end of the year. And we come to the taxpayer. None of that, so all that is not being said here tonight, Derek. There's so many uses and so much revenue that could be generated, but in the back end, it would come back to the taxpayer. So there's a lot of revenue that's not coming back. I mean, charges that are not coming back to the taxpayer also. You gotta look at the big picture there.
I'm looking at the big picture, but I'm also looking at the town's in trouble. You want to do a tax raise. We need to accumulate all the money we can other than putting your hand out to the taxpayer. Correct? Like I told you before.
That's a topic that has been discussed at previous meetings, Derek, and there has been a commitment to take a look at that going forward. The first question you asked was about the accumulated deficit, which Kristen told us was $855,000. In reality, anything that was charged, or if anything had been charged over those years, that would be a higher number. There's no doubt about that. I believe Kristen's right. It's a much smaller number, but there has been a commitment to take a look at what that number might be going forward. I know that Councilman Licciardi has asked that question a number of times, and given that it is now a non-union entity, I believe that there will be further discussion about that.
And I appreciate that, Mrs. Williamson. But now, just to counter what you just said, so when the Civic Center revenues cannot meet their expenses, where does that money come from?
It increases their liability to the town.
So we just keep going backwards?
Hopefully not. That's not the goal. Clearly, I don't think we've ever thought of that as being revenue generating. I believe the ice rink probably does because there's only so much ice around the state. The field house itself is not necessarily ever going to be much better than a break even, and that's probably a best case scenario. But hopefully,
well, I can tell you that ice facilities are way above break even situations. I know of two of that I work for that are very positive. Almost 24 hours of ice before COVID game. That's what I'm saying.
I believe the ice can be a positive. That's correct. I agree with you.
For the record, she beat her revenue. She met her revenue for 2020 budget for the ice rink, even with COVID being shut down for 3 months. So that's not an issue. But again, like I said earlier, Mr. Veed, this council has looked at that, and through negotiations, we've tried to prevent it from going further negative, and we're trying to positively impact the budget over there. And hopefully this year and next year will be proven factors, and then the council can reassess at that point.
All right, so David, so with taking that into consideration, how many years are we looking at to see going forward if it meets it or keeps going backwards? Where is there a cutoff point?
I just said within the next 2 years.
I mean, $855,000. I'm sure the school department would enjoy that, and I'm pretty sure the police department, the fire department could buy some nice equipment.
And
You know, so how far backwards are we going to go before we realize there's no point of return?
Mr. Reed, I think I answered that question. I said that the town council has worked thoroughly to get that out and negotiated with the unions and actually got that non-unionized. And I said within next year or the year after, we would sit back and reassess what the Civic Center is doing. I will tell you this, as a personal coach, as a person, Mr. Lawton's been a coach, this town by no means is ever thinking of mothballing the Civic Center and ice rink. Okay, it's something that has been near and dear to a lot of our hearts, and a lot of families use these facilities on a daily basis. There are many residents who go and walk inside that track on the indoors when it's raining out. There are many people that are using these facilities, and trust me, the council's last resort is mothballing the Civic Center. At one time, there was council members who were talking about renting it out or doing whatever, making it storage. I can tell you now, coaches, parents, and whoever would be very upset in this community if those two buildings were ever mothballed.
Well, as a taxpayer, I'm pretty upset to know that we're going to keep going backwards. So after 2 years, we'll bring this back up.
I think the issue that's been discussed is the amount of debt owed to the town. I think that's been addressed, and certainly in future fiscal years, I certainly think it will be a topic to be continued to be discussed. So I'm going to move on to my next question, Mr. Reed. If you do have another one, I'll certainly get back to you. I do have a question. If I get this right, I believe it's from a Beth Oliveri from 8 Gerald Street. Joe, a little help on where that question.
Norman, Beth asked if we are having property evaluations done again this year.
For maybe the tax assessor, in respects to Beth's question, was when are we having?
Beth is asking, are we having property evaluations again this year?
Did you hear that, Sal?
I can answer that. We are up for a full reval in fiscal year 2022.
Thank you, Director Benoit. That should answer Ms. Oliveira's. Do I have another one in the catch-all, Joe?
We have, again, Holly Torpy from New Light Street. Are you worried with all the increase in taxes, more houses will be for sale? I see a lot of sale, and what about older residents in town?
Not sure who to direct that to. If you want to take a stab at it, town manager, that's up to you. It seems kind of speculative, but if you'd like to comment on that, I'd allow it.
Yes, thank you. Again, that's a question that is hard to answer. Clearly, there are houses for sale every community. Generally, depending upon the kind of house, some sell quicker than others. So it's virtually, it's more of a statement rather than really a question to respond to.
I agree. Does anyone else want to comment on that, or? Okay, we'll move on. I do see Thomas Oates has another question. Tom, looks like you have another question.
Yes, I do have a question and a comment. The question is, and while we're looking for the answer on that, the question is, where in the budget do I find the landscape architecture line item? I'm not able to see that. That would be the question. And the comment is, I keep hearing the same thing.
We'll take your question first, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Town manager, is that a question you can answer for Mr. Oates?
Yes, the landscape architect funding, I'll have to check. I believe it's being funded through the recreation open space funding. Any improvements that need to be made as a result of the work that's being done will be made through the capital account.
Tom, did you hear that, Tom?
Yes, I did, and it kind of leads off into the problem with the playground at Factory Street and the one at River Point, neither one being handicap accessible. That's been kind of on the back burner, and we're halfway through summer where the children should be enjoying these places. I wonder where we stand on that.
Is that your comment, Tom, or is that a question?
Well, that kind of the town manager's response led into that comment. I mean, that question. Where do we stand on that? I'm sorry to double hit you with two questions, but
I'll give you a little leeway, Tom.
Thank you.
Can you address that?
The landscape architect is working with a surveying company. Both the sites have been surveyed, and the information has been given to our landscape architect, who is in conversation with the Governor's Commission, as I understand it. So it is moving along, even though we've had our COVID-19. The planning and review has still been going on, and my understanding is at a discussion stage with the Governor's Commission. But it has progressed while COVID-19 has taken a backseat to other projects that has been going on while at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to leave my comment, which is a rhetorical question. For many years now, it seems the one thing we hear is moving forward. And every subject that seems to come up, we're going to be moving forward, Civic Center budget, and everything else that we deal with as far as what it's costing the taxpayers, moving forward. My rhetorical question is, when are we going to grab the bull by the horns and straighten this mess out? Coventry was able to float.
All right, Tommy,
even funded.
Tom, I'm going to rule you out of order at this point. You're beyond the budget discussion for this evening. Certainly, it's nothing personal.
Understood.
That's probably for future fiscal meetings, town council, school committee meetings.
Thank you. Just hope the council persons all heard it. Thank you, Norman.
You're very welcome. All right, I do have, if I'm getting this right, I have a question from Deb Leander, 80 Harding Street. She is asking, do we have a tax freeze for the elderly? Who would like that one?
The moderator, I can answer that real quick.
President Gosselin, go ahead.
We do not have a tax freeze for the elderly. We do have a senior exemption that is, you fill out an application. I think it has to be in by December 1st of the year you turn 65, and you can get a tax exemption as a senior.
Thank you, President Gosselin. I don't see any in the Q&A. Let me just check the chat again.
Norman, you have one question in the Q&A from Jerry Lee at 172 Prospect Hill Avenue.
Joe, so I don't get it. If you want to just,
all right,
you want to just publish it.
Jerry Lee of 172 Prospect Hill Avenue. What is the total dollar amount in department head salary increases?
I think we've already covered that, but town manager, if you want to answer that again, that was early on in the Zoom meeting. We did talk about department head increases. If you want to just break that down again, town manager.
Yeah, well, I think the finance director would have that number. current budget.
Director Benoit, is that something you can get your hands on?
I'm looking right now to see if I have this summary, because it's spread out throughout the budget. So let me see if I have the summary. So for fiscal year 21, the 3.5% raise is $43,206 for the general fund.
Thank you. I do see a virtual hand on a Henry. Is Henry out there?
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you identify yourself and give your address, please?
Certainly will. My name's Henry Regnier, 125 Gulf Avenue, West Warwick.
Mr. Renier, the floor. I think you're muted, Mr. Renier.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
My question and statement is, yes, there is an exemption, tax exemption for the elderly, of which I'm one of them. But it's $1,000 for the senior, 1,000, but it's only at whatever the going rate is. If it's $29 a thousand, then it's only $29 that we seniors get as a tax deduction or abatement. Shouldn't, you know, I'm on a fixed income as most of the elderly in West Warwick. I think something should be done about that.
Okay, I certainly, I take that as a concern for the elderly, and based on President Gosselin's earlier answer addressing the senior or elderly exemption. I believe that covers it. Is that okay? I'm sorry, go ahead, President Gosselin.
I'm sorry, can Sal speak on that? And confirm the numbers on that?
Sal, is that something?
Yes, I was cut off there for a while, but I'm back on. The senior exemption is worth $258 off of this year's tax bill on a residential home. It's a it's in the ordinance, it says 10,000, but that number changes from year to year based on the tax rates and when we go through reval.
So Mr. Renner is right that so it's $10,000 exemption. So when your tax rate is $25 on 1,000, you get $250. But if your tax rate is $29 on 1,000, you get a $290 exemption. Correct?
If the tax rate were to go up, then yes, the exemption amount should go up also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. And Mr. Renier, that's from the tax assessment. Certainly noted your concerns in the future as well. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Give me a sec here.
Norman, I've got another one that's typed in the Q&A from Jeanette Mariani of 116 Cochran Street.
Okay, if you want to just publish that for the Zoom meeting, Joe.
That is in the Q&A section on the screen. They're asking how much money is owed to the town from curbside textile recycling. And they noted at last check, they believe it was $6,400.
Mr. Manager, can you address that? So that is Jeanette Mariani, 116 Cochran Street. I do see it now. How much money is owed to the town from curbside textile recycling? At last check, it was about $6,400 is what she queries.
That would again be a question for the finance director if she has that information.
Director Benoit, can you address that?
We have only received one check that I am aware of from the curb style place. I believe it was only a couple of $100. I have not received any other reports stating what they've collected. I'm not sure if the recycling coordinator is getting those, Nicole not, but they have not made their way down to finance yet.
All right, thank you. Let me call back Derek Reed at this point. Derek, you have a virtual hand up.
I got 2 questions left and then I'm done.
All right, let's take it.
The first one's gonna be for Kristen.
The Director of Finance, okay?
Is the foreign properties case part of the expenses paid to the solicitor in 2019, 2020 after January 2019?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Can you say that again, Derek?
Is the foreign properties case part of the expenses, solicitor expenses paid? In other words, was there any invoices paid to the solicitor in pertaining to foreign properties in 2019, 2020 after January of 2019?
I would have to, you'd have to submit that question to me and I would have to research that. I don't have his invoices memorized. I would have to go back through months of invoices, pages of invoices for each month and pinpoint that.
I'll save you the energy. I have that already. I just want it on record. Thank you.
Hold on, Derek. I want to see if there's other questions. Thanks, Phil. Joe, nothing in the Q&A, right, Joe?
No, Norman, you're good there. Just Jerry Leet has his hand up.
Who does?
Jerry.
Jerry, I'll recognize Jerry if he could announce himself and give his address.
Gary Lee, 172 Prospect Hill Avenue. Just a follow-up on the question earlier about department head salaries. Helen earlier had mentioned there was a 9% increase. When the finance director spoke, she said it's a 3.5% increase for the year. Can we just, which one's the actual number, 3.5 or 9?
So for fiscal year 21, the department heads are getting a 3.5% raise. They did get a 3.75% raise in fiscal year 20. However, that was budgeted in a different part of the budget because that raise had not been decided along with all the other contract negotiations at that point in time. So we put a bunch of money aside in general government to cover that. So it wasn't in the individual raise in the individual salary lines. If that, and there actually is a proposal to adjust those salary lines now that all the negotiations are complete, then it would show that the raise from fiscal year 20 to 21 for the department heads was 3.5%.
Thank you, Finance Director.
Thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
Derek had one more question for us, Norman.
All right, yeah, I'm just trying to clear the Q&A. I think I caught up with everything. Is there one now?
Actually, one that just came in. Can you clarify what that raise would amount to in the budget from a person named Deb? Deb, we need you to type in your full name and address, please.
I believe I already answered that. It was for fiscal year 21. It was $43,000 for the department heads.
Yeah, I agree as the moderator.
So
You could give the amount.
Excuse me?
I agree with you. You did answer the bulk number as well as the percentage broken down in the 2021 fiscal year budget in front of us. So Joe, I could probably answer that by just typing it to her. And that'll take me back to Derek Reed. Derek, you have one more question? I think your hand's still up.
Yeah, I got one last question. This is for the council and the school department. If the budget is voted down Thursday, is the council and school department prepared to work with a 0% increase? Because my councilman was ready to work with a 0% increase until the vote was taken with the council.
Well, I think the vote on I understand your question, but I think the vote is either a yes or a no to approve the budget or not approve the budget on Thursday. And certainly that'll put both bodies, both the school committee and the town council back to work on submitting a new budget for the fiscal year.
But I understand that, but are they prepared to work with a 0% increase if that becomes the issue?
Does anyone want to address that from the council or school committee's perspective?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer, Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed, as I mentioned in my comment, we would not be prepared to function without the increase because, as I outlined earlier, Chairman Lawton already talked about, we've already had a $1.9 million hit to our budget for next year. So, and we outlined some of the devastating adjustments we've had to make to our budget. So with the uncertainty of the funding coming from the state at this point, we would not be prepared. And I'll be honest, considering the uncertainty, and we've talked about this at every budget workshop and hearing that we've had this spring, considering the uncertainty of schools reopening in the fall, if we go back in any capacity, there will absolutely be an increased amount to our budget. So, and those increased costs, we're going to rely on the aid that comes from the federal government, whether it's the CARES Act or an additional stimulus package that we're all hoping comes through. Just a couple of the things: increased cleaning supplies, increased staff. We have to have a medical coordinator to coordinate and handle what happens if anybody, a student or a staff person, presents in school with symptoms. We have to have additional staff to isolate that person. We have to have an additional area to do that. So that was in very short, Mr. Reed, to answer your question. I do not see the needs of the school department going down.
And I completely understand what you're saying. As a matter of fact, looking at it from a standpoint of with this COVID stuff, I mean, I don't even see that the money that's being asked for from the school is going to set us up to send our kids back to school. And I don't even see that the town facilities are fit to be within the guidelines discussed right now. But that's, you know, that's a conversation for another time.
Thank you. Are there any more questions out there?
On behalf of the council, you know, knowing the school department needs 800,000 and the town is requesting a little over 300,000, are we prepared to cut 300,000 out of our budget? It'd be very difficult, and there would be some services obviously cut. But if we take the 800,000 from the school department, it would be very catastrophic to them. And I think personally, anybody who was here in 2010, 2012, and I think Karen was a principal then, you know, when they talked about cutting sports and whatever, the budget actually got voted down back then, and they wanted us to implement, when the town council wanted to cut 5%, and they were legally able to cut 5% from their budget. When the council did so, the public spoke openly and very loudly, and I think there was over 1,000 people between the auditorium and the cafeteria that told the council to re-implement the 5%. They did not want to see our schools get cut. So if we have to implement an $800,000 cut, and those are the places they're going to cut from, And yes, it's going to be very difficult, and we'll be at this again, and it probably get voted down again, and people would want that back implemented back. So it's going to be a very tough time if this budget gets voted down from all aspects.
Thank you, President Goslin. I'm looking for any more public comment and/or question.
Luis Colon from the school department's got his hand up as a panelist to comment on this also.
All right, the moderator recognizes the Vice Chairman of School Committee, Luis Colon. Floor is yours, Lou.
Thank you, Norm. Just also to kind of reiterate on Karen's perspective with respect to the fact that to answer Mr. Reed's question with respect to are we prepared to move forward without that increase. Just one example that I just wanted to put out there as to how this COVID situation impacts the school system. For example, on some schools, buses, they're allowed like 3 kids per like a seat in some instances. And theoretically, if they said that we could do 1 child per seat, that would triple the amounts. But there's been some discussion as to whether or not they would require us to have 1 child per every other seat. So that's almost 6 buses to replace that 1 bus. So, I mean, that's just one thing. And the uncertainty of knowing exactly how RIDE is going to make us deal with that particular, just that one situation is just an added expense that I think that we need to keep in mind. So that was just my quick comment, Mr. Reed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Chairman.
Thank you.
Let me just check for any other questions on the public comment portion. I don't see any under the attendees and/or panelists. I don't see any in the Q&A nor the chats. I will close the public comment section at this time. And before I take a motion for adjournment, I certainly just want to put out there again that the vote for the budget is this Thursday, July 16th, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the West Warwick Civic Center. I just want everyone to know that again. And is there a motion from?
A motion to adjourn? You have one more comment in the Q&A that just popped up.
Sorry. Peeling back a little. Sorry about that.
Deb Leander at 80 Harding Street commented again in the Q&A.
All right, so Deb Leander, 80 Harding Street. I can appreciate the thought going into the budget, but COVID is affecting the taxpayers as well. I do take that more as a comment than as a question, so I will certainly just publish that as a comment from Ms. Leander in respects to certainly the COVID situation to taxpayers. With that,
Actually, Mr. Moderator, does either the town clerk or the town manager want to talk about some of the safety precautions being taken at the Civic Center for the all-day vote?
Town manager, can you address that from council?
Just so people feel that it's secure, safe, it's been approved, and we do have procedures in place.
No,
Yes.
I appreciate your concern. Town manager.
The same procedures and precautions are going to be in place that were in the presidential preference primary poll. There's going to be certain appropriate spacing for voters going in. There's plenty of hand sanitation availability. Only so many people will be voting at one time. There'll be a traffic flow directed around the voting machines. They come in one area, out the other. So every precaution that was taken during the presidential preference primary poll, which the Secretary of State was here and saw our operation and commented how well it was operating. So for any resident that is planning to vote, rest assured that the Civic Center is laid out with every guideline that is there. Every precaution's been taken, and rest assured that you will have a experience that is completely safe and very efficient as far as the navigation of the voting areas.
And will face coverings be required?
I believe they're going to be required. Hopefully everyone will cooperate, and if they don't have one, certainly they'll be provided for any resident that doesn't have one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williamson. Is there a motion at this time?
Motion to adjourn.
I believe that
Second.
motion to adjourn from Councilman Messier, seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 The meeting is adjourned. Thanks everyone for paying attention during this Zoom.
Thank you, Norman. Great job.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great night.